All right! Welcome to Rockstar! Now, just so you all know, we're going to cover this topic as fast and as completely as we can. Just the way you like it. Thanks for watching!
Chapter 1. Small Town Life. When you grow up in 1930s Macomb County, Alabama, life moves at a certain pace. There's no television, it's hot and humid. People move and talk slowly, like they're underwater. It's a small town where everyone knows each other. When you call someone on the phone, you don't need to identify yourself by your name. People know you by your voice. Like any town, there are different levels of income, but in general, everyone is poor. It's right at the beginning of the Great Depression, a horrible economic recession that has struck nearly the entire world and left millions broke and unemployed. There's no hurry because there's nowhere to go, nothing to buy, and no money to buy it with. In today's world, kids can't really play outside anymore. The media and our mothers worry about kidnappers, about gang violence, drugs, and bullies that will beat you up for kicks or your smartphone. But in Macomb, Alabama, those things don't really exist yet. People don't lock their doors at night. Young children swim unsupervised in ponds, play with rifles, and walk to school alone without too much concern. There's always a neighbor keeping an eye out for trouble, and everyone knows each other. How could you commit a crime against a person that you sit next to in church, or meet weekly in the market, or work next to in the fields? Compared to the 21st century, with all of our social media, technology, and the grimness that is the present-day network news, Macomb County is a simple place, at almost an idyllic or perfect and pleasant time. Things are kind of uncomplicated and predictable. This is the environment in which Jean Louise Scout Finch and her older brother Jim grow up in the beloved American coming-of-age novel To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Scout is just 5 years old when the novel opens, and a pure tomboy. She runs around in dirty denim overalls just like her brother, and has short hair and an equally short temper. Jim is 4 years older, and at the beginning of the novel, he and Scout play and fight with each other on equal terms. But not for long, since Jim is right at the age where he hangs poised between his childhood and his upcoming adulthood. A young boy named Dill, just 1 year older than Scout, but a head shorter, rounds out the cast. Dill is from Meridian, Mississippi, but arrives in Macomb every summer to stay with his Aunt Rachel, who is a neighbor of the Finches. Scout and Jim live with their father, Atticus Finch, who is a lawyer. He's tall, patient, and somewhat distant. He's there to provide guidance when asked and redirection when needed. He's quick to scold Scout for all the fights she gets into, but otherwise, he's often just there, reading the newspaper or listening to the radio. He is a modest and very polite man, a true gentleman. Although his children are young, he doesn't coddle them or treat them like babies, nor does he hover protectively over them like a modern-day helicopter parent. The kids don't call him father or dad. Instead, they call him Atticus. Throughout the story, Atticus is an unfailing regular. When the kids go to him with problems, you can often guess what his answers will be. He is reliably virtuous, and the kids, and us readers, need that because the novel covers some uncomfortable territory. To Kill a Mockingbird is split into two parts. Part 1 focuses on Scout, Jim, and Dill's childhood experiences running wild in Macomb. They spend a great deal of time trying to tempt a reclusive neighbor out of his house. They get into fights, get dirty, charm, and or terrorize neighbors. You know, kid stuff. But part 2 of the novel takes place when the children are somewhat older and facing a very adult situation. A black man named Tom Robinson is on trial for attacking and sexually assaulting a white woman. Even under the watchful eyes of neighbors, quiet little Macomb is not without drama. Atticus is assigned to defend Tom in court. While part 1 focuses on setting up and introducing characters and watching Scout and Jim grow up, part 2 focuses more on the community and how they react to the trial. Much to the irritation of the community, Atticus intends to defend Tom to the best of his abilities. This goes against the major anti-black sentiments felt by the community. They think that Atticus shouldn't actually try to defend him, and instead just accept and agree that he's guilty. You see, in the 1930s Deep South, racism and segregation is a very real thing. This is just 30 years before Martin Luther King delivers his famous I Have a Dream speech, and some 25 years before a 14-year-old African-American boy is murdered for reportedly flirting with a white woman. Macomb even has a surviving Civil War Confederate soldier, now a senior citizen. Although they're free, African Americans don't have the same rights as white people at this time, and they're looked down upon society as the lowest class. The South is under Jim Crow law, a series of racial segregation laws passed after the Civil War, which limited black and often poor white influence in the political or public arenas. There are black water fountains and white water fountains, black public restrooms and white public restrooms. There are black churches and white churches, but white men gamble in black churches during the week. The black community lives in their own neighborhood called the Quarters, which is a slum. They work in the fields, kitchens, and households of white people, just like their enslaved relatives used to. Everything is clearly laid out. Each race is neatly separated, and there is no mixing. Because Tom is black, he's automatically seen as guilty by the white community at large. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just as you know that gravity exists, that if you drop something it will fall to the ground and not float away, the townspeople believe that they know with equal certainty that Tom Robinson is guilty. Atticus's decision to even put up an effort to defend the man, despite his race, stirs up a lot of emotions in the community, with devastating consequences. Scout, Jim, and Dill must reconsider everything they know about right and wrong, and must also reconcile their views of the neighbors with their neighbors' actions. Very often, what a person appears to be is not really who they are. At this point, you might be thinking, this book sounds like a drag. Am I going to feel bummed out when I get to the last page? But what's remarkable about To Kill a Mockingbird is that it handles a pretty serious and sad topic with an exceptional amount of warmth and humanity. When you read a book for school, you're probably trying to look for it from a scholarly point of view. What does this mean? Why did he do that? What's the difference between a simile and a metaphor again? But this book offers so much more than that. At its heart, To Kill a Mockingbird is a great story. While the whole first half of the book is about Jim and Scout and Dill simply growing up, getting into trouble, interacting with the various colorful characters of Macomb, and yes, learning valuable life lessons. But what's great is that the author doesn't waste time telling you what those lessons are. She shows you something and then steps back and lets you draw your own gut conclusions. Like Atticus with his kids, she tends to leave the reader to their own devices, but she's such a compelling writer that the answers are natural and obvious to the reader, even if the answer presents itself more as a feeling. If you are paying attention to anything, pay attention to your feelings while you follow the story. They might tell you just as much or even more than the similes and metaphors. Do you feel that Tom Robinson is innocent or guilty? Do you feel he'll be treated fairly? Why does Atticus take on his case when he knows that he'll most likely lose? And when you know you're beaten, like Atticus, how do you find the strength to try your best anyway? If you know that the outcome won't change no matter what you do, how important is what you do? In fact, the story will argue that when faced with the impossible, what you do is everything, and to treat those that are different from you with sympathy and understanding is all that matters in Macomb County and beyond.
Well, all right. We hope you enjoyed that. You just did it, the first chapter of the topic. Now, just so you know, there are 4 more chapters to go in this app, and it will only take you about 45 more minutes to complete, and you are totally done. Now check this out. The app also comes with about 15 pages of analysis and summary that you can download and use any way you need to. Here's what you got to do.